boss, tell me what to do to make all my lunker leg dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk. It must be Tuesday night. The Pond Boss coming at you live to talk about ponds and water and fish and stuff like that on the heels of the latest Institute of Higher Pondology. I'm going to start off talking about that a little bit once I see we got somebody watching. So far it looks like nobody's tuned in, which that's pretty normal for me, right? So here we go. Oh, we do have 3 viewers. Hey, we are off to a start. We're on the coming off doing the latest Institute of Higher Pondology. Hello, John Dyer. I figured you'd be in there, buddy. You made it back to North Carolina just safe and sound, looks like. I'm glad. We got to talk a little bit. So you guys chime in. Let me know what's going on. Hey, don't forget, hashtag PondBoss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a PondBoss hat. And I know we have some because we gave a bunch away. Well, we didn't give a bunch away. They earned them at this last Institute of Higher Pondology. Bill Schrum, long time no see. Hey, you guys know the drill. $35 for a PondBoss Magazine subscription. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. So let's talk a little bit about ponds and fish. John Dyer, who's watching here, sent me a question earlier. So, and I totally end up what all to post, but there's a cold front blowing through here right now. And, of course, John and Bill, I'm sure you've gotten that front passed already. But it's blowing through here, and the winds shifted out of the northwest, gusts up to 35 or 40 miles an hour. So I thought I'd talk about that. So John asks, the surface temperature, this is in North Carolina. Surface temperature is 56 degrees. The fish haven't fed in 2 weeks. No visible fish since the turnover. Still brown and low visibility, nothing floating. When you say nothing floating, I presume you're going to be talking about fish. It's been raining and overcast the last couple of days. What should I see next? Nothing. Hello, Steve Lewis. Good gosh, I'm so glad to see you, buddy. Dadgum, haven't seen you in forever. Hot Springs, Arkansas, my longtime friend Steve Lewis. As far as I know, the only guy really, or the longest guy ever raising pure strain Florida bass over in Arkansas. Good to see Steve. Hey, John Henry, you got it. You know what to do here. Let's see here. Who else we got going on? There's Rashawn Odom. I've seen Rashawn kind of checking out the PondBoss stuff lately. Rashawn, good to see you. I think you and I've had a couple of questions going back and forth. There's Daddy Mac. Daddy Mac's still flying from last weekend. Yes, the cold front blowing hard on us now. He's down in San Antonio. 60 degrees right now, going down to 31 tonight. Oh, you're going to have a freeze. There's Ron Krisman checking in from Michigan, not far from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I'm glad to see you guys. There's Rick Wren. Rick Wren says, I might be on. Rick is on. Rick and I talked earlier. Rick and I went to high school together. He's a year older than I am. We worked at Six Flags together when we were in high school and right out of high school. So here we are. So John Dyer is asking, where are my tilapia? Oh, that's a good question. So let me see. Let me stroll back here. 56 degrees. I'll tell you where your tilapia are, John Dyer. They're cold. They're shivering. They're preparing to give it up for the winter and die. So let's talk about that just for a minute. So this is kind of interesting. Tilapia, we use those to stock, to eat filamentous algae and to reproduce a lot. But they're tropical fish, so at some point when the water gets cold, 52 degrees to be more exact, they're going to die. So your tilapia are going to be kind of hunkered down, real sluggish. And the reason tilapia die is because most fish store their fat in pockets. Tilapia store their fat in flesh. So it's kind of interspersed in their muscles. So when the temperature begins to drop, their muscles get real stiff. And because that fat, what happens if you take bacon fat and put it in the refrigerator? That's what happens to a tilapia. It turns into bacon fat. And then they end up dying. They can't swim anymore. There's Greg McMillan. Look at there. Fred Bingaman checking in. Fred's over in St. Louis, Missouri. Greg McMillan's in the Metroplex. That was a fun weekend. Greg was there. John was there. So was Bill Schrum. Who else is on here today? Danny Mack was there. Good gosh, you guys are all faithful alumni. And we had an absolute blast. So Thursday, we all connected up at noon, had a big bowl of soup or a bowl of chili, and we got things kicked off. Started off with some time in the classroom learning about the fundamentals of pond management. Then we ended the day electrofishing some fish there at the West Haven Ranch and did some weights and measurements and stuff. Then we were about an hour and a half behind because some of the speakers like to talk a lot, even though there were only two of us, I think. One of us likes to talk a lot. So anyway, we were a little bit late, but we were having a big time. Cody Butler just texted me, guys. You guys know him. He was there. So then on Friday morning, we had breakfast early, like at 7 o'clock, and then at 8:30, and we went through what we were going to do. Then at 8:30, we headed to Jimmy Houston's lakes. And oh, my gosh, did we have a blast. The guys, I think they kind of wanted to fish with Jimmy, but I told them, you know what, don't do that. Do not ask Jimmy Houston to fish his lakes. Well, I'll be dadgum if Jimmy Houston didn't ask every one of them to go fishing. So I'm standing on his dock waiting for two electrofishing boats to come around the bend so we can take a look and see what's going on. And there comes Jimmy's boat, and there's 6 guys in his boat with him, and they're fishing. So we spent time there. We electrofished his lakes, had a great time. And then we got back in time to have a fun evening. And then all day Saturday we had classroom time, fisheries evaluation, talking about plants, looking at different scenarios and stuff. So talking about what's going on now, let's just take John Dyer's pond because it's going to be fairly typical. When the water temperature is 56 degrees, ponds have turned over by then. So you guys that have been around the block a while know what's going on when a pond turns over. In the summertime, the ponds get warm. They turn into layer cakes. You get a warm layer of water sitting on top of a cool layer of water. And then when we get to this time of year and that warm layer of water cools down to the same temperature as that lower layer of water, they mix. That's called a turnover. So John Dyer's pond is definitely turned over. So what happens then is the fish are trying to seek the best place they can be. The water temperature at 56 degrees is going to be autonomous from top to bottom of a pond. So then they're going to be holding closer to structure. At 56 degrees, warm water fish aren't moving around very much. They don't want to eat. They can't move. They're stuck. And so all they're wanting to do is hunker down until the water warms up again, which, knowing the weather the way we know it, we're going to warm up again. So your fish will get active again, but at 56 degrees, post-front, they're not going to feed. I wouldn't even present feed to them. But a few days after the front, once the barometric pressure begins to shift and rise again, then they'll start to feed again. Hello, Kenny Sanderson, checking in from Northwest Kansas. Good to see you, my friend. We talked a little bit about you at the Institute of Higher Pondology and some of the cool things you're doing with the walleye and saugeye and sauger and things. Just one of those conversations around the fire pit that we didn't have. Actually, it was around the margarita machine. We went through some margaritas. Greg, this one is walking stick. I've never heard of it, but it was recommended to me, so I'm trying it. I kind of ran out of Woodford last weekend. So, all right, guys, throw me a few questions. Let's talk about that. I'm so glad Rick Wren's checking in. Rick, gosh, I hadn't seen Rick probably in 45 years, about 45 years. But Rick lives in the Metroplex, had a great career as a controller. He was a CPA kind of guy, and family farm out kind of in West Texas. And he started kind of rooting around on the internet and found this guy named Bob Lusk and kind of wondered if it was the same one that he went to school as Bobby Lusk back then. So we got to have a fun 45-minute conversation today. It was good catching up with Rick. John Harson, good to see you, buddy. Tell us about your pond. What's going on with yours? You guys pitch me some questions. So let's keep talking a little bit about what's going to happen with this cool weather. Let's see, somebody, I'm trying to remember who it was, sent me a picture of some bushy pondweed, and I know who it was. It was my weight loss guy. Yeah, Kevin Wilson sent me some pictures of bushy pondweed, actually while we were doing the Institute of Higher Pondology. And I got some analysis about that I'm going to make here in just a bit. It's pretty cool. And so he asked, what do we do about it? Well, I'm going to tell all of you guys, if you've got aquatic plants that are bugging you, do nothing right now. They're about to go dormant. They've basically, they have mostly stopped taking up sunlight and producing nutrients. So it's hard for any kind of herbicides to translocate to the roots and kill any plants right now. So they're getting ready to go dormant. When they do that, they're going to sink to the bottom. And if the water gets cold enough, they'll die. Now, what I try to teach people is if aquatic plants are an issue for you, learn about those plants. Identify them. Go to AquaPlant website at Texas A&M University's website page. And you got to, first of all, you got to positively identify those plants. Ron Ardoin. I've known Ron, good gosh, probably 6 years. And I still cannot get his name right. He thinks it's on purpose. Ron Ardoin. Ron is a premier pond management consultant, got a pond management company. Lately he's been engrossed in designing a new lake in Huntsville, Texas, but he likes to sleep at night in Lake Charles, Louisiana. There's Chico Garcia. I love myself some Chico. Chico is our videographer. He shot some outstanding video footage. He put together a super video. I think it's posted on the ThePondBoss Facebook page. You guys check it out. That summarizes the Institute of Higher Pondology. Let's see here. Oh, Deborah Corlew. Shaky's Whip is on the glass here in Northwest Illinois tonight. I have never had that. Lay it out there, Deborah. Tell us what it's all about, because I'd really like to know. John Larson, my water looks great. It was very clear today, which I would expect that to happen. The fish, especially the bluegill, are feeding like crazy. I would kind of expect that to happen. I cranked the times up to feed more, so the feeder will empty out over the next 3 weeks. Good strategy. Because this time of year, when the temperature is, say, 60 to 72 degrees, the water temperature, those fish are going to feed like crazy. They're going to grow like crazy. They're going to, right now is the time that they're building up body fat for the winter, and they're developing their eggs for next spring already. Oh, look at there, Nico Caminita. Ooh, I know I just butchered your name. I'm sorry. I will see you at the Mississippi State American Fisheries Society workshop. Dr. Neal and I are trying to come up with a good pond management project to do for an undergrad research project. Nico, I have one. You just need to call me, and I'll tell you about it. It is pretty dadgum cool, and I've already got a bunch of data. So we can talk about that. I'll be at Mississippi State University and sometime in January. I don't remember. All right, Deborah, it's an Irish whiskey with a toasty marshmallow front. Good gosh, there's another high school buddy trying to call me during the middle of the broadcast. Didn't turn my ringer off. Oh, my gosh, okay, I'm going to have to find out about that. With a toasty marshmallow front and a smooth finish. Now, that's a pretty good description. Walking stick, it's pretty smooth. It's aged well. It doesn't bite your tonsils on the way down, which that's important to me. And it's, I don't know how to describe it. It doesn't have a marshmallow front. That's great. All right, I want to tell you a couple of things. Hey, you know what, Nico? I'll see if I can't get there early, maybe like the night before. Talk to Dr. Neal. And you guys, maybe I can take you to supper or something that night. If there's a good place there in Starkville, Mississippi, we'll go hang out and do something fun. Mike Cottrell's checking in from Palo Pinto County, Texas. Rick Wren is west of you, Mike. He's got a place out in Haskell County. So hey, listen to this. This Institute of Higher Pondology was by far the best one we've had. Content was just as good, but what made this one the best one was the synergy among this group of people. We had guys from 23 years old to 75 years old, different walks of life, different backgrounds. We had a physicist, a president of a hospital, an entrepreneur. Greg's an entrepreneur. We've got fisheries biologists. We've got people with pond management companies. Good gosh, Cody Borgfeld, Texas Hunter Feeders, was there for the whole session. He just loved it, and so the energy among that group of guys was to me one of the most energizing things of the whole session, the whole 2.5 days. And as a matter of fact, one of the attendees, Chris York, texted me, and this guy, he's a big deal. He's a real big deal. And he texted me and said that was the best 72 hours he can remember spending in years and years and years. That spoke volumes to me, because I got to tell you, it was a great 72 hours for me too. The next PondBoss Institute of Higher Pondology will be held at West Haven Ranch, April 14, 15, 16. And guess who's coming? Sarah Parvin. I called Sarah. A couple of guys recommended that Sarah be contacted, and I called Sarah Parvin, and she said, Bob, I'd love to come. So if you guys don't know who Sarah is, she has a slab lab in Huntsville, Alabama. And she and her dad own a lake there, and they've really pushed that lake, and the lake recently pushed back. She had a massive fish kill, and she's learned a lot from it. And I'm pretty excited for Sarah. I'm not excited about the fish kill. I'm not excited about what caused it. I'm excited about the aftermath, because now she gets to go in, remediate that lake, start it over, and I think she's going to have better odds at growing some record-sized bluegills than she had before. When you take a lake like she had, they had a fish kill like 5 or 6 years ago and killed their trophy bass. So when that lake began to rebound, she said, you know what, we're going to switch gears. We're going to try to grow trophy bluegills. Well, for those of you guys that are around me enough, and you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, but I got to do it. There's 5 fundamental pieces of lake management. Water first. I call it happy water. You guys know that. If the water's not happy, all these other 4 things are irrelevant. So Sarah has learned that lesson. She knew it before the water quality deteriorated and they had a fish kill. And the fish kill was precipitated by a 5.5-inch rain of water that came in and flushed out everything that they had done to stabilize that water. So she's going to come, and what happened with her is she decided, well, we're going to turn it into a trophy, try to grow some record bluegills. Well, they had to unpickle the pickle. They had crappie, they had stunted bass, they had bluegill of unknown age, and minimal knowledge of their genetics. So they started working with American Sportfish Hatchery, which is an outstanding organization. Those guys know what they're doing, to revamp that lake. But it was kind of trying to pull the pickle out of the vinegar and turn it back into a cucumber. Doesn't work that way. So now she's got a blank canvas, brand new situation, and she's going to get to share all that with us at the next Institute of Higher Pondology in Texas. Plus, on the next one, for you guys that are thinking about coming, we're going to leave the price, I think, at $1,500, which is all in. The first 7 people that sign up and pay will have a room at the ranch. Bobby's trying to figure out how to get some more beds in there, but right now it's going to be about the first 7 folks that sign up will have a spot and sign up and pay. We've already had 3 people email me just in the last couple of days say, hey, I'm interested. And I thought, since we're not going to go to Jimmy Houston's next spring, we'll have extra hours that we can do something else. So I called Big O, Steve Parks, the owner of Rage Tail Baits, and said, hey, would you come give like a half-day clinic on fishing, bring your boat, get out on that lake, let people see how side scan works, how live scope works, teach them how to use the different baits. So I'm pretty fired up that as long as that date doesn't conflict, and right now it doesn't, then he wants to come and hang out with us. All right, Nico, I'm glad to see you. Yeah, I figured I drove through Starkville a few months ago, but I didn't get to stop and talk to anybody. Deborah, I'm trying to figure out how to describe that, but I'm not good at it like you are. Mark Dyer from Nebraska, I've got to come back. Yes, you do. It's really fun, and it's educational, and I am changing up the curriculum, although I do harp on the big 5 things, and I'm not going to change that. That's a key. That's part of the backbone of this whole thing. Bay, I thought you were bird hunting, dude. I called Jimmy today, but he didn't call me back. I'm going to get him in the morning. He's an early riser. I'm going to catch him in the morning. The neat thing about Sarah's Lake Rehab is they're documenting all of it for others to see the process. That's one of my favorite things about Sarah Parvin. And she is totally transparent, come hell or high water, and she's built a huge following, not only because of what she's doing, but because of her transparency and, 2 or 3 other things about her. Start in Vegas. I love me some Bay. You're in Idaho bird hunting. Okay, well, I knew you were somewhere, and I didn't think it was in Texas. And as soon as I talked to Jimmy, I've invited Jimmy Houston without Bay's permission to come fish his lake next week at we got a 2-day field day coming up where we're going to try to harvest some catfish and carp. I know we're going to harvest a few crappie, but Bay and I are going to be real picky about how many of those we take out, as many gar as we can get. We got a group of folks coming that we're going to do some genetic studies. We're going to weigh and measure some fish, pit tags, mark recapture studies. We're going to see how many fish we can recapture that we pit tagged back in March, 6 or 7 months ago, and just do a study of that lake and see that, just kind of get a snapshot. And there's 2 or 3 things I'm real interested in Bay's Lake. I want to see the survival. We stocked some Titan bass from Red Hills Hatchery and some pure strain Florida bass from American Sportfish Hatchery. We're going to see if we can capture some of the small fish, and I know Bay's bass reproduced. So we're going to capture some small fish, take some genetic tissue from them. You just basically clip a piece of the fin off and send it in to see what the genetics are of the young of the earfish, and compare that to probably another 70 fish that have been in the lake for years. And I got several guys coming that are really good bass anglers. I'm going to charge them with trying to catch some 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bigger pound fish so we can look at the genetics of those fish and compare those. So we're going to be doing some really cool fishery science. I've got 4 electrofishing boats signed up that are coming, and it's going to be a fun couple of days. And we're going to get a whole bunch. Deborah, you too and your whiskey. Cheers to your hubby. Mark Dyer. I visited with Sarah on the phone a bit. That's one of my favorite things about her is she will take your call. She doesn't take my call. She does. And she is very willing to share. Joe Deppner. We used to have some in the attic. I'm not sure if it's still up there. I need to look. What did you have in the attic, Joe? American Pickers is going to come looking for you if you got anything cool in the attic. So you had, wait, you probably had some of that. I'm backing up here to look. Oh, there's Dave Weber. I didn't even see Dave come on. Oh, the Irish whiskey. Okay, so Joe, tell us what you got hiding in the attic. Dave Weber, is it normal for largemouth bass to prefer green sunfish over bluegill? No, it's not normal for them to prefer. A friend of mine in northwest Missouri has a 6-acre pond that's 11 years old, stocked with bluegill and largemouth bass. We observed several different sizes of bluegill coming to the feeder, largemouth bass swimming in among them, and seems to be well-behaved bedfellows. That's a pretty interesting description there, Weber. He goes to a neighbor's pond and traps 3 to 4 inch green sunfish. When he drops the green sunfish in among the bluegill, his largemouth bass go crazy attacking and consuming the green sunfish. I find it interesting how they seem to prefer the green sunfish over the abundance of bluegill. I love that question. Weber, dude, I don't know how you come up with some of this stuff, but you just hit this one out of the park. So here's the way I see that. I'm going to come at you from a couple of different angles. This is pretty fun. Sip. When your neighbor goes and catches those green sunfish, traps them, puts them in a bucket, hauls them over there, and he throws them in the lake, they're moving. They're hitting the water, and they have a fight or flight response. So when they see that there's those big fish in there, it's flight. When they take off, that triggers a bass. When a bass sees that movement, it's going to chase it. And when it chases it, it's going to hunt it down, suck it down its gullet, and that green sunfish will never see the light of day. What would really be interesting is for him to go buy some golden shiners and do the same thing, get his hands on a few bluegill, do the same thing, and I bet you he would see the same response as what he's seen with those green sunfish. The other thing about green sunfish is bluegill and bass, they pretty much live in the same niche, and when they grow up in the same niche, if those bluegill are too big, they've learned how to escape being eaten by a big bass. Now, if there's a bass big enough to eat those bluegill, it's going to eat them. You just might not see it. But I know this, a bass is not going to, it's not Grey Poupon, you know. It's not going to just look at it and say no. If that bass sees something moving and it's hungry, it's going to eat it. If it sees something moving and it's in its zone, its home base, it's going to chase it and try to eat it. If it's invading a nest, it's going to chase it off. May not eat it, but it's going to chase it. So the green sunfish are just a victim of the circumstance. And the circumstance is that somebody has gone over there to that pond where that green sunfish grew up, trapped it. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I don't want any pushback. Trapped it, moved it against its will. That's what I'm going to say. And then pour it out of a bucket into a new pond where it absolutely has no idea where it is. Is there a place to hide? The first thing it's going to do is bolt. And when that happens, that bass is going to see it and it's going to eat it. But when you do have an abundance of bluegill, the bass are going to eat those too. It's just that it's just not going to do it all at once. John Harson, I did try a bag of the Aquamax 4000 last month. It's nothing like the MVP, and the fish didn't eat it. That's because, John, that's a grain-based fish food. It doesn't have the same smell, doesn't have the same taste, the same texture as the sport fish products do. So 4000 is a grain-based fish food. It's kind of like eating Cheerios. You know, would you rather have a T-bone steak or Cheerios? That's Cheerios. We'll back up and make sure I didn't miss anything. Shanky's Whip. Now, dadgummit, Deborah, I'm going to have to go to Specs or somewhere and try to find that. Spanky's Whip. What was it? I can go back and look at it later. Oh, well, you guys know the deal. Okay, I'm backing up. Okay, holy cow, I'm getting behind. Yep. Here, I'm going to toast Deborah's husband one more time. One more toast. All right, Rashawn, let's see what you got. Thanks for your expert advice, Bob. I feel better now that I've caught a couple of stock largemouth. Sadly, it was unexpected, and I didn't have my scale or my measurement board. Well, Rashawn, you got another shot at it. Those fish aren't going anywhere. Jeremy Day, can you talk about other fish food for cold water? Sarah was promoting it. It has more fat and 48% protein. I don't know what that is, but that's probably the endurance feeds. You know, and the thing about fish food nowadays is it's gotten competitive enough where some of the smaller companies, like Endurance, are trying to figure out. Endurance used to be optimal. And so I need to call those guys, so I'm make sure I'm not speaking untruth. But they do have special formulation with different ingredients. You know, where companies like Cargill, for example, they follow what's called a least cost method. Even though they'll use the same recipe, if they can get less expensive ingredients, then they might switch the kind of grains, for example. So the backbone of the food that I promote, that I know works, is fish meal. Fish meal for carnivorous fish is what it takes to make them grow. They don't grow on black-eyed peas or corn, which nobody puts black-eyed peas in there. What was the largest? Okay, yeah, Jeremy Day. Good to see Jeremy. All right, what was the largest? And something else you got to be careful about with the cold water fish food, it's got more fat and more protein, and they use that for cool water species of fish because their metabolism rates are slower. It takes longer for them to digest that. I don't know that I would use a 48% protein with a lot of fat in it in warm water fish in the summer because that can affect their livers. So, a little tidbit for you there. Mark Dyer, what was the largest bass seen this past weekend at the West Lake? John Dyer, you kept the data. Why don't you type that in? But let me see here. Holy cow, I'm thinking about it. I think there was one knocking on the door of 8 pounds. It's 4 years old. John, help me out, buddy. What was the biggest bass that we saw at West Haven Lake? Mark Dyer, have you heard much or had any experience with using calcium peroxide for phosphorus binding? I have not heard anything about using calcium peroxide for phosphorus binding. I don't know how that would work. Calcium peroxide. I don't know the brand name for that. I know that there's a hydrogen peroxide product out there called Green Clean to use to knock out algae. Hello, Bob Jones. Increase bass harvest this time of year or let them fatten in southern Illinois. Use the relative weight of those bass. Weigh and measure them. If your bass are not 90% plus in the fall, I'd sure consider harvesting them. Let your best fish get fatter. That's what you need to do. If your bass are mildly crowded or overcrowded, now's a good time to be culling some of those. That's my take on that. Weigh and measure some fish. Then make that call. And I'm a big fan of Wade Bales' Smart Fish app. If you plug in a length and a weight into that app on your phone, you can do it while you're fishing. You will get an instant reading as to how to grade that fish, what percentage, what percentile it falls in. If they're under 90, I would sure look at culling some of them this fall. I would not let an 85 percentile bass stay in the pond to eat food that a 95% bass could have otherwise. That's my comment on that. John Harrison, the color difference in the food was very different. The Aquamax 400 looks like it had more fillers or plant proteins. That's true. And you know what? That food has a purpose. That food is good for tilapia. It's good for catfish. Not quite as good for hybrid stripers or any of the carnivorous fish like bluegills. Although they'll eat it, they just won't gain as much weight. Dave Weber's got an experiment. Go buy some shiners and see if the same thing doesn't happen. I bet it will. Chico's telling us how we can find that video he did. That video was outstanding. So Mark Hicks was curious about that. I have no experience, no idea, no clue about calcium peroxide to bind phosphorus. Have no idea. That would be a question for Landon Wyatt at Natural Lake Biosciences. It'd be one for Matt Rail. It's a little bit outside of my scope. Side note, have you seen all the huge blue cat caught that was most likely in New World? No, where is that? Have you all seen the huge blue cat caught that was most likely the world record is 121 pounds out of a lake right there on the North Carolina-Virginia border? Deborah. Hubby says, so he's in on the toast. Oh no, my computer just ran away. Oh, here it is. All right. Holy cow, it's already 8:04. I'm going to pause a minute and do a commercial, I think, if I make my computer play fair. Okay. Hey, ThePondBoss Magazine, $35 a year for subscription. Say it with me now. Cheap Ron Ardoin, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Texas Hunter Products. Man, we had a blast with Cody Borgfeld. When I called Cody to see if he wanted to sponsor this latest institute, he said, not only do I want to sponsor it, I want to come because I just don't know enough. I really want to learn more about feeding fish. He's already pretty knowledgeable about fish feeding, but now he knows a whole lot more because he got to get out there and do some and talk to different people. You know, birddogit.com, Oliver Fleming was there with Bird Dog. That young guy was soaking it in. If you guys haven't checked out Bird Dog, check out birddogit.com. It's a pretty darn good thing. It's my son's company, Jonathan, A&M graduate of 2004. Woo! No, I really didn't just do that. I hope he doesn't see that. He'll kill me. No, he'll just make fun of me. But it's a pretty cool platform that started out as a VRBO Airbnb for hunting, which it still is, but it's morphing into more land services. And what Jonathan's doing is trying to fulfill a niche. He's identifying the niche and fulfilling it as he goes, and he's done a pretty good job of that. Purina Mills, I love their feeds. Kenny Sanderson knows what I just said, and you guys that know me know what I just said. I got to work with those guys from the late 90s until probably 2010, refining the fish food products. They've got really, really good products. They do a great job. Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman was there at the Institute, stayed for the whole thing. You know, he got to go fishing with Jimmy Houston. Go figure who'd get to do that. He did. Easy Docks of Texas, check those guys out. I'm missing somebody. Who is it? Purina Mills, Texas Hunter, American Sportfish Hatchery. Those guys are a great sponsor of ours. They do a super job. They have a fish farm in Alabama, and they've got a footprint in Texas where they're in the pond management business. So you guys check out American Sportfish as well. Let me scroll down here and see what else we got going on. Greg McMillan, 7.9. There we go. That's it. Oh, Ron said, oh, everybody, good gosh. You guys know the deal. I think 7.9 is the lake record. And we did everything we could, now that I recall, we did everything we could to make that fish 8 pounds, but it didn't quite get there. Okay, Deborah says our 2 to 5 inch bluegill in April have been caught this month, 11.5 to 13 at 114% relative weight. Big round of applause for you guys. That is astonishing. That is great growth. That's what you want. As I recall, you guys are in Indiana. That is fantastic growth. Let's see here. Ron Krisman. Gosh dang it, my computer keeps jumping around. Hang on with me. Bear with me. Which you do, I know. Ron Krisman. What are some thoughts on managing a pond for insects for part of the food chain? Best types of plants in the water and edges or breeding material, etc.? That is a great question. Nobody's ever asked that one. Most of the lakes that I design, I like the design to have some rock piles not far from the shore with 3-to-1 slopes going down, some riprap in different parts, and that kind of habitat is perfect for insects. And I'll give you guys an example. I've really started learning about it. Hello, Jim Allen. I'm going to ring you. Man, I was tied up all day. I cannot wait to hang out with you next week. We're going to have a big time. So Jim Allen's coming in from Kentucky to be the data guy to help us at Bay Miltonberger's field day. And he's going to help man the charts and man the data sheets and pit tag fish and all that. I kind of got a feeling he'll end up in an electrofishing boat some too. Won't you there, Jim Allen? And Jim's the guy that started off helping us figure out how to refine our spreadsheet. And if any of you guys that are wanting to weigh and measure bass don't have that spreadsheet, send an email to info@pondboss.com. Say, hey, I'd like to have the spreadsheet. That way you can have a good way to track your growth rates and see what kind of condition your fish in compared to what they should be. So, what was the question? Oh, food chain, insects. So, Richmond Mill Lake, they drained that lake. That lake was built in 1835 with mules, Fresnos, and slave labor to harness water to turn a grist mill for that community around Laurel Hill, North Carolina. Well, all they did was build a dam and flood just 125 plus acres of standing timber. Well, back in 2000, there had been 4 or 5 hurricanes blow through there, and the state of North Carolina had changed the laws on dam safety. So Dr. Jim Morgan, who at that point was the managing that family property with his dad, they decided they were going to drain the lake and rebuild the dam and bring it up to standards, because that dam was built out of sand. And it had a concrete spillway that overflowed in the middle of the dam where the grist mill turned. And as time went by, they switched from a grist mill to a power plant. Now, 4,000 to 7,000 gallons per minute every day flows over the spillway of that dam. And they use that flow rate to turn a power plant to create electricity back in the early 1900s, 1920, 30, 40, through there somewhere, probably maybe even up to the late 40s before they could figure out how to get electricity from other sources. Well, the dam was made out of sand, and I remember, I'll never forget, I called Mike Otto. I said, dude, how can they build a dam out of sand and it hold water? And he kind of leaned in, he says, the water's got to be going in faster than it's leaking out. You can always count on Mike Otto to throw a little dose of common sense in there. So what they did was, since that dam was leaking, they didn't want to risk the possibility of it blowing out, because part of the community is downstream from that lake. So they drained it in 2000, and it took 4 years to rebuild the dam. And they had to go in and tear the old dam out. They came back in and cored it, brought in clay. They spent a lot of money rebuilding that dam. And as the lake was down, it was very interesting, because it's shaped like a salamander, a long, skinny salamander. And Gum Swamp Creek is the name of the creek. There are a lot of gum trees there, a lot of pine trees, sandy soils, acidic water, tannin-colored water, and you get a glass of it, it looks almost like that right there, maybe even darker. If I'd have held that up earlier, there'd been more to look at. Got to make sure I don't get busted. So while the lake was down, they called me in and said, hey, can you help us turn this into a premier fishing lake? And I've written it. I've got a book coming out here in a few months. This story's not in it, but the next book that'll come out next year will have this story in it. So I said, yeah, you know what, let's do that. So I flew over there and started helping them figure out how to create habitat. The bottom of that lake, they drained it down. They could only drain it down to where there was 30 acres left. A lot of standing timber in it. And almost every bit of that were stumps that had been chewed up since 1835. Now here's the perspective to think about it. In 1835, Texas was a nation. Texas didn't become a state until 1845. So tracking back at that point, like 170 years ago, the remaining wood that was left was just thousands of stumps that were kind of sanded down and eroded. And I really expected to see a bunch of silt and, organic matter, peat, things, stuff like that in the bottom of that lake. There wasn't that much because of the flow rate and because it's a sandy bottom. Well, there were a couple of coves where they had some silt, but for the most part, that lake was sand. So we ended up having to come in and create some habitat. So I called Ray Scott, a friend of mine who started BASS back then, and he came over with his crew, and they built a bunch of underwater fish communities, and I got to help design that. But one of the things that I thought we needed to do was to put some riprap along the inside edge of the dam, and then come around in other places and add some rock piles. We did all that. Well, as we started to design the habitat, it took about 2 months, or actually less than that, for the lake to fill back up when we closed the gate. I noticed that there were some areas of what looked like Johnson grass growing up in shallow water. To this day, I don't know what it was. It looked kind of like some kind of cut grass, but not nearly as tall. Well, there were 8 or 10 spots in that lake where the grass would break loose. It would get buoyant, then it would float everywhere. So as I studied that lake over a 5-year span, I noticed that every year when those floating islands of grass would break loose, they would be covered with husks of emerging insects. So one time I had my electrofishing boat there, and I started rooting around and digging underneath those islands that were floating. So basically there were roots in the water that fed the plants above, and there was everything from small shrimp, scuds, but mostly insects, just literally thousands of insects. And dragonflies, damselflies, mayflies emerged. So shallow water with aquatic plant life, riprap, and rock piles are the best habitat. Now, here's the consequences of all that. When I first started going there, you had to go in at dark or the mosquitoes would carry you away. Within about 6 or 8 months, I started noticing that we didn't have to go in at dusk. The mosquitoes weren't there as bad. Then it dawned on me we were seeing all these different kinds and colors of dragonflies. Guess what they eat? Mosquitoes. And then to follow that, we started seeing more songbirds. Then we started seeing more predators. As we fed the fish in that lake, ospreys nested. They could eat a lot of fish. Bald eagles showed up. Songbirds were feeding on a lot of the flying insects. Some of the predators came and ate the songbirds. So what we were doing, what we designed below the waterline, influenced what happened above the waterline. It was really fascinating to watch. Also, the number of cottonmouth water moccasins went down because we were feeding so many bass. That lake was supporting so many bass. It was amazing. And the bass were eating the little cottonmouths. So it was a pretty cool little system going on. Jeremy Day, how old is Jimmy's lake? Well, Jimmy Houston, his 77-acre lake, he built that one. That lake may be 20 years old. The 100-acre lake was there when he bought that property. I have to go back and look on Google Earth, but that 100-acre lake is probably, I bet you it's 35 years old, maybe older. But what really struck me was in 2015, I lived back then near the other side of Lake Texoma. Jimmy's place is really near the Washita River, W-A-S-H-I-T-A, Washita River. And we had 40 inches of rain in 40 days, and it blew the dam out on Jimmy's 100-acre lake where he lives. He lives on that lake. And it completely blew the dam out. And I went over there and looked at it with him. He was sick to his stomach. But he repaired it and rebuilt the spillway. The problem with that lake was it didn't have a decent spillway on the side. It had kind of a flume that meandered down from the middle of two-thirds away across the dam. It meandered down because it was such a pitch. So when Jimmy rebuilt the dam, he put a much, much, much bigger concrete flume in it, and that made a big difference. Done with that. All right, so let's see here. There's Mark Hicks checking in. John Arson, guy couldn't get fish up all the way off of the boat floor. The scale showed, 146 pounds. Well, that's got to be something fairly recent. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you know what? I do remember seeing that, but I kind of scrolled past it because I was in a hurry. Let's see. Jim Allen, we're going into year 3 of no weeds. We'll catch a lot of bass, mostly 1 to 1.5 pounds. Looks like a good bass spawn this year, but very few bluegill nests. We can't afford a survey. It's either survey or buy some fish this spring. Suggestions? Survey. You know what? Talk to me. Talk to me next week, Jim Allen. I can be pretty creative on how to figure out a survey. Yeah, you know what? Give me a little time. I don't really want to drag a boat to Kentucky, but let me think about it. Look up Jesse Lance on Facebook, Northwest Illinois. Yeah, there we go. I knew that. I just don't remember it. John Dyer, talk about how you interpret the West Haven Lake results over the last 4 years. So what we do there at West Haven Lake is to see the progression of the fishery. And Jim Allen created a good overlay method, and John Dyer picked it up and made it a little better to where we can monitor the progress of the bass. So we're looking at an XY graph of length frequencies, and then we compare that to relative weights. So let me see the best. That's going to fly over too many heads. Let me think about this a minute. So basically what we're hoping for when we look at a fishery and we look at the length of each bass, we look at the number of each length frequency and we compare that. And that turns into a bell curve, right? So early on in a fishery's lifespan, we're hoping to see some fish in the 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 inch to 16, 18, and that's about where it finishes. Then the next year, we hope that bell curve moves to the right. We see more 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and then some 20s. So what we were doing was looking at the progression of the length frequency of fish in that lake, and it is in fact progressing about like we wanted it to. The thing that's a little spooky is when we compared the relative weight. So in other words, were the bass in that lake as healthy as they should be? Did they weigh what they should be? And we did see a discrepancy where there were some fish that were a little underweight. So the trick was, what do we do to make those fish gain weight? Well, last year when we looked at it, we missed the window to stock threadfin shad and fill a niche in the food chain. So the decision was made to enhance the food chain and cull a few of the underperforming fish. And we didn't cull a huge number of underperforming fish, probably not enough to make a difference, but by adding those threadfin shad last spring and tilapia, we've seen a good uptick in the weight gains of those fish. So that made a big, big difference. And so now that's, help me out, John, if I missed something. Ron Ardoin. We saw important vegetation was for holding small insects. Yeah. So part of what Ron's job was, I tasked him with trying to collect some vegetation. So he pulled some vegetation out of Jimmy Houston's lake, laid it up on a paper towel on the tailgate of his pickup, and he started shaking out some coontail, and it was just packed full of insects of all kinds of species at all kinds of sizes. Red worms, there were midge larvae, there were even a few mayfly nymphs and things, and he found some really, really cool stuff, lots of snails in there. And so by digging down into that vegetation, Ron did a pretty deep dive into showing what that aquatic plant life value really, really is. Speaking of that, I posted the Chico's video on my LinkedIn page today, and I got a phone call from an aquatic plant specialist that wants to come speak at the next institute, and I invited him to come. So he's going to come talk. Busted for what, Chico? Yeah, you know the drill. My wife doesn't like me having whiskey while I'm doing this show. John Arson, funny you say that the lake is shaped like a salamander. My lake is shaped like a salamander. Well, there you go. We like salamanders. Bald eagle hanging out in my lake. Cool. Lake record is only 8 pounds. I'm a little surprised not bigger. It's only 4 years old, dude. Those bass are only 4 years old. But here's the big but. We electrofished the lake. That doesn't mean we collected the biggest bass. It would not surprise me to find out at all if there's a double-digit bass in that lake in 4 years. Would not surprise me. But the thing is, electrofishing, it's not common to shock up the biggest bass, which that could be frustrating, but it's really not, because that's kind of the deal. Bob Jones got some Woodford waiting at his lake. Well, you know what? Let's figure that out. Let's see here. John Arson, come over here, Bob. You can hang out with several of us here in the Louisville area. There's like 4 regular watchers here. Okay, John, you know what? Let's start figuring that out. Let's start figuring that out, because I think that would really be fun. You know, if you haven't touched base with Jim yet, Jim Allen, you guys connect the dots and let's see if we can put something together. If we can put something together, I bet you I can figure out how to get there and how to get an electrofishing boat there as well. I kind of got a knack for that sort of thing. Fred Bingaman, my longtime dear friend from St. Louis, maybe it's time for another world tour. You know what? It probably is. It is. Isn't the midge fly larva the ones responsible for CWD and deer? I don't think so, but I do not know. Because the biologists claim that CWD can be transmitted from deer to deer. So I don't know how that works. Jim Allen, Derby and Distillery tours, including... Okay, gosh dang, you guys are making this so enticing. All right, I'm coming. Let's figure it out. EHD, that's right. That's, you know what, that's right. It's not CWD. It is EHD, which is blue tongue. So I get that. Yep. All right. You know what? Hey, Ron, did you take any pictures of the bugs in the vegetation? Because John is helping put together the report for Jimmy Houston, and I promised Jimmy that report by the end of the week. So I don't know. All right, guys, we're getting toward the end of the hour. And as always, it's fun hanging out with you guys. Rick Wren, I hope that you made it through the whole thing, but I doubt it because this stuff's kind of boring to most people. So, John Harson, and you guys work all this out. You guys pitch something at me. You know, if we get somebody to throw a little bit of expense money at it, I'd be good with that. And then I will figure out somehow how to find an electrofishing boat. And we'll go up there and we'll have a good time and go hang out with you guys. Chico took a video. Chico, did you take a video of the bugs? If you did, let's see that video. Video following Ron on his quest. Chico, what are you drinking? Hey, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. You know, as always, hanging out with you guys is always fun. It's energizing. You know, hanging out with Deborah, getting to share a sip with her, that's cool. And, we're getting really ready to... Oh, and here's another question. Mike Wharton, this is going to take us to the bottom of the hour. Woo, here we go. My lake is very overpopulated in the 8 to 14-inch range, 300 plus CPUE. 300 plus CPUE catch per unit of effort. 300 plus. So that means 300 plus bass catch per unit of effort. That's a lot. We're aggressively harvesting this fall and early spring. We'll be putting more bluegill and tilapia next spring. We eventually want to start... Uh-oh, what happened? So Rick is still there. Good. We will eventually want to start F1s. Would you bite the bullet and do it this coming year or wait till next? I would wait until you get your fish numbers down. So here's what I would tell you, Mike. If your bass, if you got to go from 300 plus CPUE, catch per unit of effort. So let me explain what that is to everybody. When you're on the pedal on an electrofishing boat, you're counting how many fish per unit of time. And if you're catching 300 plus bass per hour, that's a lot. You need to get that down under 100 before you even consider stocking some more bass in there. So what I'm going to advise that you do is, if you're going to put bluegill in, make sure they're adults. If you're going to put in tilapia, make sure they're big enough. But I don't know how big your lake is, but you need to be harvesting the heck out of those 8 to 14-inch bass. Here's a little caveat. In order for a lake to get to the point where there's that many bass, it didn't happen in 1 year. That happened over a span of 2 or 3 years or 4 years. That being the case, a significant number of those 8 to 14-inch bass are old. Old meaning they've lost their growth potential. So the more of those you can harvest and make room for younger fish to come up the pipeline, the better your odds are going to be to grow some big fish. And when you say F1s, what that says to me is you want to grow some giant fish. If you want to grow giant fish, you got to get some of that age class out and make room for the next ones. Because here's your predator fish, here's your forage fish right here. You got to get this number down to push this number up. When you can get your forage fish to right here, then you can come in and stock some F1s and expect some good growth. Even though you might stock the best genetics, if you don't have the best environment to host those genetics, they're not going to thrive. Think about Shaquille O'Neal. If his parents didn't feed him, was from age 0 to 4, he would have never topped 7 feet. Probably still would have been a good basketball player, but he wouldn't have been the guy that we know as Shaquille O'Neal. So not only are genetics important, so is that environment, and you got to set the stage for those fish to really, really grow. So hey guys, that's a good spot. Yeah, I would bite the bullet and wait until you get things going like you want it. Dallas is my guy going, Mike Wharton. Dallas Clark is a true professional. Work with Dallas. He will tell you probably what I just told you. So guys, I'm going to wrap it up right here and tell you once again, thanks for hanging out with me. I always appreciate it. You keep me sharp, you keep me focused, and it's fun. So I don't know where I'll be next Tuesday night, but I got a feeling I'll be hanging out with you guys. And Rick Wren, good to hear from you, buddy. So until next week, adios for now.